Well, I was going to include, of course, that reading today. I was going to focus, though, on the book of John as the beginning of the year, but this is a day to celebrate Epiphany. So the almost 12th day of Christmas. So we are still in the Christmas time. And so as a minister, you often have to be very flexible, being able and willing to change things on a dime. So I was also going to have all the candles still up, but they got taken down by mistake. And so I had to shift on that one too. So we're going to be just fine. It's funny because we can do that. We're allowed to do that, right? This is our church and our God, our fellowship together, and this is what it means to be in the United Church of Christ. I was the funeral yesterday. One of the family members said, "Can we do this instead of that?" And the funeral director was with me, and I said, "Yes, of course we can. We can do whatever we want." And the funeral director said, "We must be in a UCC church. So we do whatever we want, darn it." So Merry Christmas! It's still Christmas, you know. Absolutely. We're about to move, though, from the time of Christmas, and yet, of course, we're still within the season. Christmas is a season that begins on Christmas Day and goes until the day of Epiphany, which is actually tomorrow, the day when Jesus was revealed to the world by the visitation of the wise persons from the East. That day is officially January the 6th, but for middle of the road folk, it's observed on the Sunday after New Year's. So this is the story of the wise men who came to see Jesus. They were not Christians like you and me. These wise people were not Jews like Jesus and his parents. The wise men were persons from differing countries, and they met up on individual journeys where they found one another, and they each were looking for what the meaning of an unusual star formation in the sky was all about. And these people were not kings, as we call them, as they have been described, though it's hard not to call them that today. And they were strangers to the area, so they would not have had any idea of the local prejudices to care who was in and who was out in the area. The wise men were astrologers. They were looking for whatever the star led them to, whatever. They weren't sure what they were looking for. There were no preconditions on who or what they were going to find, like class or racial qualifications. It's a good thing, too, as when they arrived, what did they find? They found a poor family, lowly, in a manger, in lowly conditions. And by all appearances, Jesus was hardly something to travel hundreds of miles and numerous months to find. But there was something driving these people to find the person to whom the star led them. So close to Christmas, the aura of the time is still aglow. Today, we still have the wreaths still on the windows. And the Advent candles are still there and glowing. What are they? Hope, peace, love, joy, and the middle is the Christ candle. They're still glowing. I do this, and also notice hanging up above. We haven't had anything hanging for a while. If you even notice that it got up, Susan and Richard got that up before Christmas, the star. You know, years ago we used to have a cross always hanging, and it would change from season to season. So we have the Christmas star hanging, something to focus on, just like the wise people were. Do we have a focus? Do we in our individual lives have a focus? What drives our decisions? What moves us to action? What is the center of our being, and what are we seeking? Do we seek the king that would lead us in mighty and victorious battle? Do we focus our hearts on the one who will assure us that we are always going to be in the right? Do we devote ourselves to a vision of a God of material results? Dear God, give me this new job and I will really believe in you and never doubt. I wonder if the wise men were looking for that. If they were, it was obvious that they would have gone to the wrong place. Now, there's a famous commercial jingle. I really haven't heard it lately, but it still runs around in my head. I'm going to make it sort of be an earworm in your ear for the next hour or two now here, okay? It can keep playing and playing in your ear as it's supposed to. I wonder if you remember this. What would you do for a Klondike bar? Remember that? What would you do for a Klondike bar? It was ice cream. It was an ice cream sandwich, basically. I've heard it thousands of times, and no doubt within each of the commercials there are foolish characters describing ridiculous scenarios that they would put themselves through to be rewarded with a chunk of ice cream covered in chocolate. The commercial describes these persons' devotion to this novelty, right? It's a devotion to a novelty. So what have you been devoted to in your life? I know you've been devoted to what? I'll remind you, the wise men were seeking whatever they were led to. They devoted to finding something. They didn't know exactly what it was that they were going to find, but they were devoted to finding it. And at the beginning of today's scripture, there were words put in their mouths by the writer, and it said, "Where is this child born King of the Jews?" Their real focus was on the journey that led them to something unusual. So I'm going to ask you and me, are we devoted followers of Jesus? What would we do to find where the star leads? What would you do for the proverbial Klondike bar? What would you do? Do we focus as those wise persons focused? If pressed, would we be able to describe what leads our lives and prove it out in the evidence of our lives? I invite you to look more closely, to seek a focus, to devote your efforts to finding what the star leads to. If you really choose to, along the journey, you're going to see wondrous sights, I would imagine. You're going to see opulence, but you're going to also see destruction on the path. You're going to see peace, and you're going to see strife. You're going to be coerced every once in a while to leave the path, and often you'll lose your way because, let's face it, the sights and the distractions along a path are many and very inviting. But your heart will lead you back to the path, I know. And it will be waiting there to once more be trod. Now, along the path, there will be times when you glide along and you find yourself declaring, "Oh, this is easy, no problem." But at other times, when the journey seems to be riddled with destruction and despair, you'll be wondering why you're on such a path, when you may declare, "Why didn't I just go along in life with the rest of those folks?" It's going to be two times. Usually it's going to be one of those two, right? You feel it, you know it. But the path will be forgiving, and it will welcome you back. We, the membership of the First Congregational Church in Essex, United Church of Christ, are a varied lot. We have numerous ex-Catholics in our midst who have ritual and teaching that they were required to receive by the church and the family. We have some members who grew up in more fundamental churches who were indoctrinated with teachings that they often have trouble reconciling their current worldviews with. We have lifelong Congregationalists who find great identification in being contrary to most any picture of authority. So how on earth, how do we as a faith community then, made up of all those different people, have a focus? Well, on every weekday morning and at least 3 other times during the week, we host Alcoholics Anonymous over here in the Covey room, usually there, and then downstairs as well, and maybe sometimes in the seminar room at the other end of the hall. they too find themselves to be a diverse group of people and believers and non-believers alike. And despite the initial angst of doing so, the people who are in AA, who make it, those who maintain sobriety on a daily basis and who piece together first a day and then a week and then weeks and months and then years of continuous sobriety, they are the ones who accept a loving God of their own understanding. And let me say that again. They accept a loving God of their own understanding. Some of them may be atheists, but they have some understanding of a power greater than themselves. Or they may be a Catholic who does the ritual all the time. Either way, they understand, and they surrender their thoughts and their suggestions that they are the ones that are controlling the world. They surrender to the fact that they are not controlling the world, they aren't controlling places, people, or things. They're just not in control. They can't. They learn, breath by breath, to trust in God and to focus their lives. They learn what's called the joy of living. That's what they call it. So we too are invited to learn the joy of living, to focus upon the God of our own understanding, to toss aside the pressures of life and realize most often those pressures are of our own making, and to rest easy in a life of conversation with a loving God and to serve our fellow human beings. And I invite you to join me once again in a focused effort here and within the loving walls of this inclusive Christian community. One of the other things that we have done is to refocus ourselves caring for people to be inclusive, specifically with people of different sexual preference, of different genders and such. We're refocusing ourselves on that this year. This year we will focus also on issues concerning our environment. I just read what climate is meant to be. We can only do that, though, by having a focus. You can't just decide, I'm going to do this. You've got to be able to focus on it. And if you have a focus, it probably is not going to fall away. So, beginning next week, I will include in worship a very, very short time of focused prayer and meditation. It won't take more than 30 seconds. It's going to be a start of learning once again how to focus. Something you can use right then. You can take it home. You can take it to work. You can take it wherever you want. And you'll be able to use this to focus and recenter your life. And each week we'll include that in our worship. So practice will make perfect. It's going to be this simple. And you can try it here with me right now. Okay, here's what we're going to do next week as a part of a ritual. You're just going to hold your hands up about shoulder level like this. Okay? And you're just going to say or think the words, God, help me to understand your will. Can you say that? God, help me to understand your will. And then you can close your eyes and maybe breathe 4 times. Let's do that. Okay, put your hands down. That's simple. It's just a start. It's a start to building, because then you'll find probably another way. And you can do that each day, very, very simply, to sort of shut out the things that are the noise around us, to get us back into a focus of God. And then hopefully, as a group, we'll then be able to maybe open a meeting that we might have about climate or O&A or just a council meeting or stewardship, whatever it might be. And we can just start that together. And then we'll all hopefully be in the mindset let us move ahead with God's leading. So on your journey together, like the wise people, who came to find whatever they could find that was going to change their life, not knowing exactly what it was, but knowing it was going to be wonderful, I pray that on your separate journey and on our journey together, we will open up our hearts and our lives and be willing for God to lead us. So friends, may God's peace then be received by you in this journey. My friends, may the Lord be with you. Let us